Hello and welcome to the Sound on Sound People and Music Industry podcast with me, Sam Inglis. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Rok Gulič from OLLO Audio. Welcome, Rok.
Hi, how are you all doing?
Really well, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm very excited to be on this podcast because, Sound on Sound has been around for many years. And I remember being a teenager when I was, first encountered with a real thing, the printed version back in the days. And it was always so special to see things that you couldn't even imagine. And of course, 20 years ago, the internet was still a baby. So a lot of things I've learned from your magazines.
Well, 20 years ago, did you ever imagine that you yourself would be making products that would be featured in Sound on Sound?
Not in a million years. I mean, this is kind of like, it feels a little bit surreal if you put it in that prison that you're now mentioning, going from, early days of testing audio gear and getting familiar with audio in general, and to now where, I'm an active participant in the professional audio industry. So yeah, there's like this kind of dream coming true in a way.
So are you one of the people who's gone from being an audio engineer or a musician to being a manufacturer? What's your route into this? I've been basically born into a musical family. My dad's been playing drums his entire life, and he sometimes says that we have a house or a home because of that, because just daily jobs were not enough. But of course, I've been growing up next to drums and microphones and cables. So this is very natural environment for me. And yeah, of course, eventually I became a drummer. I have my own band. And exploring sound and signals and stuff even more in detail later on when I went to college for audio engineering. And then a little bit later on, I started this company. So in case the name OLLO Audio isn't familiar to any of our listeners, you are a headphone manufacturer. And unusually, I think, you're a kind of a boutique headphone manufacturer, which is not something we see a lot of in the industry. I mean, we see tons of boutique microphone companies or boutique outboard companies, but relatively few people seem to be making headphones on the scale that you are. Why do you think that is? I have no idea, really. I can't explain this question in any way. Well, what I can say is that the company really didn't start as a headphone company. The very first product that I envisioned, a decade ago, was a tactile transducer, a subwoofer that you can feel the low frequencies and so on. And I was fortunate enough to get a grant from, my local government here in Slovenia to pursue this project. And as the project evolved, more and more people were asking me about headphones that would go nicely with a tactile experience. And eventually, I learned that having headphones with flat frequency response for mixing and mastering and so on is extremely important. And at the time, it was quite difficult to get something really good. Many engineers were relying on consumer gear. For example, traditionally, the Sennheiser 600, 650 series were very popular, 15, 20 years ago. So I tried to then design a headphone for me, basically. And eventually, a friend wanted one, and another friend wanted one, and here we go. A decade later, we are now a headphone manufacturer. Wow. So in terms of the manufacture of headphones then, are you using off-the-shelf parts, or do you build absolutely everything yourself? It's a combination. So, completely off the shelf, basically nothing. All the parts are custom-made for us. So we've engineered to go back a little bit, when I started this project, there was basically zero budget. It was just passion and love to, do something out of nothing, as I say sometimes. And, using just home tools that you have in your garage, basically. So out of that limitation, the design of the headphone came about.
So we are even today still using very basic tools to assemble these headphones. And the side benefit is that they are like super serviceable. You know, if you have like basic skills and you have like a screwdriver, you can fix them. You can replace any part on them. So that's kind of the approach to building these headphones.
Yes, I was hoping we'd get onto that because I think sustainability is a really important part of your ethos. And that doesn't just extend to making all the parts field replaceable. It refers also to sourcing, and you offer a very long guarantee on the products. These are headphones you're just designed to work with for life, really, not just for a couple of years and then throw them away.
Exactly. That is the philosophy. Yeah, trying to make everything serviceable for as long as possible, as well as using materials that have as little impact on the environment as possible. So from wood, aluminum, stainless steel, things that can be recycled, as little plastic as possible. Although, truth be told, there are parts that have to be made out of plastic. There's just no way around it. But we try to consciously keep that at minimum.
Absolutely. And to go back a little, a couple of questions earlier, you talked about your goal of wanting to create headphones with a flat frequency response. Now, the more I learn about headphones, the more I realize that that's not quite such an obvious aim as it might appear, because different people have different ideas about what flat means. How do you understand the term flat?
So flat for me is, well, I would say it has two sides. So this coin has two sides. One side is the scientific way of understanding what flat is. And the obvious flip side would be what you would think personally, what is your taste and what you could consider flat. And that could be, quite different in reality. And we've been struggling with that. When I say we, I mean the audio industry in general. We've been struggling to come to a consensus on what the true reference frequency response would be, either for speakers or for headphones. Even though in headphones it's even more a mess because we need to rely on ear simulators to capture the frequency response. And those ear simulators come from different companies and have different response. And then we have like this mess around target curves and what is scientifically correct. And of course, if I touch on the personalization or taste of individuals, of course, that's just another topic that will never end. So for me, flat means something that is scientifically as close as possible to what we as a collective industry kind of agree upon, at least on a broad stroke. But then at the same time, the majority of users, in our case, audio engineers, will get really good results in translating their mix between devices. So if that is kind of covered, then I think we are on the right track and our product does deliver flat frequency response as intended.
And what is the relationship between the frequency response and other parameters in headphone design, such as THD or sensitivity?
So the funny thing with THD is that it mostly comes from material limitations. Right? When you're pushing the membrane beyond what it's designed, well, the moment you're pushing it, you will create eventually a little bit of THD, which is, a part of any instrument, any signal chain, any reproductive product, right? So it's always there. The funny thing that many don't really understand is that THD will get higher and higher, or will become audible with higher volumes. So the moment you're turning your headphones up to 90, 95, 100 dB, you're introducing a lot more THD than you would originally thought. So in this regard, of course, the frequency response may be measured as the same, but the harmonics distortions will become audible the higher you go in the SPL level overall.
When the first OLLO audio headphones came out, you had, if I remember rightly, an open back and a closed back model. Currently, I believe you only make an open back model. What was the thinking behind discontinuing the closed back version?
So the closed back was originally based on the open back. Essentially what happened is that one of the British engineers, Chris Brown, asked if we can turn the S4, the original S4, into a closed back version for him. And we did that, snapped some pictures, posted it online, and people asked for it. So essentially the product was based on the open back chassis, and that obviously it's okay, but it's not designed to be a closed back. So there were some issues in terms of how to properly tune it and so on. So eventually we've decided to make a new closed version, but in doing that we had to kill the previous version just to release the resources that we have as well as the performance of the S4R version, at least in our perspective, was not in par with the open back. So long term, it didn't feel right to have a product that we know we can do better in the market and basically disserving kind of in a way our clients. So we removed it and built the X1 as the open version, and we are currently working on the closed version as well.
Oh, cool. And yeah, so I recently tested the X1, and I have to say I'm extremely impressed. I like it, I must say, a lot more than I liked the S4 originally when that came out. It seems to me to have a pretty flat, neutral frequency response right out of the gate, which is great. But also you've teamed up with dSONIQ to partner it with a software utility that will flatten the frequency response even more. Do you think this is something that is going to become the norm in headphone design now?
Well, I certainly hope so. So obviously it's something special that we have at the moment. As a company, being a small company, obviously we do need some edge in the marketplace, and this individual calibration on one side paired with the Realphones software is great, and it does give a little bit of differentiation with other products. But at the same time, I do love music. I love engineering in general, and I think that is the right path for all professional audio manufacturers to go down it. So eventually I hope that all pro audio headphones will have at least a little bit of calibration somehow integrated in them.
And on your website, it states that the X1 calibration process uses machine learning, and also that it's individually calibrated for each pair of headphones. Can you talk us a little bit through how the process works?
Not in detail, but in a broad stroke, we have a tool that can listen to individual pair. So again, it's an ear simulator. We put the device under test on it. And we run the program, which is basically listening to pink noise, and it's then analyzing that and creates an EQ to correct it to fit to what we've set as the ideal frequency response. And it does that with extreme consistency, which is obviously the most important part when it comes to calibration, because beforehand, to do that at scale, we would need to have an engineer doing that, throughout the day, which is of course tiring, and there's human factors get in the way as well. So the consistency went up by employing that, and also the amount of calculations that are possible with this kind of tools is just so much higher that the accuracy of the final result is just on another level.
I was interested to see the EQ curves that this process comes up with, because unlike some correction programs, they're not highly granular. There's not hundreds of tiny little notches in there. It's just 3 or 4 broad and quite shallow tonal shaping cuts. Is that a deliberate choice on your part?
Yeah, for 2 reasons. So one reason is that the headphones themselves, out of the box without calibration, are already super flat, so you don't really need to change much or adjust much. That's one side of the story. The other is that we all have different ears, and because of that, we have so-called head-related transfer functions that are so popular in many YouTube channels. So what that introduces are little resonances that we all have in different places. So for you, it could be 6 kilohertz. For me, it could be 7 kilohertz. So now the ear simulator that we use to measure those resonances will have its internal resonance as well. It could be at 6.5, it could be at 8, it doesn't really matter. The point is that if we were going to adjust the frequency response based on the resonance of the ear simulator, so the device that is capturing the frequency response, then we could drastically alter your experience with the headphones. Because if your dip is at 6 and we're introducing a boost van at 8, obviously you will feel uncomfortable listening to those kind of headphones. And that is basically the feedback that we've learned from exploring, online forums with other companies that are doing similar things as we do, not to name them. Their calibration is kind of granular. They go with 10, 15 different, bands in there, and trying to use very narrow Q factors to really pinpoint specific frequencies. And then what happens is that many of the final users do not really like the sound, because the frequencies that they're tweaking are not exactly where the final user experience them. So for that reason as well, we're trying to avoid that altogether, and we just use these broad strokes of Q factors of 0.3, 0.5, kind of way.
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. And going further, I suppose there are some manufacturers now who are making active headphones with digital DSP built into them to perform calibration or other things like virtualization. Is that a route that you've thought about going down?
I mean, yeah, we've partnered with Realphones. So, of course, they provide a software that is capable of, running as a system-wide application as well as a plugin inside DAWs. And they do have a variety of different settings available there, from room emulation to calibration to different target curves and so on. So obviously, it made absolutely no sense to develop that in-house, since they've spent a decade doing what they do. So we've partnered with them on this note. Yeah.
But you're not thinking about at some point, for example, bringing that technology into the headphones themselves.
So you mean like in the hardware? So directly in the headphone?
Yeah. Yes, because there are some people making active headphones with DSP in them, like Apple with their AirPods, for example.
Yeah. Okay, I get it now. Sure, it would be possible, but the moment you move DSP out of the computer or the audio interface that audio engineers are so carefully selecting, you're doing digital to analog conversion on a circuitry inside the headphone powered by a battery or something like that. And there's no way to avoid latency, and secondly, to get the quality inside the headphone, the circuitry, to do what a $10,000 interface will do. It's just not possible. So in full honesty, we are not really researching that as a viable future.
And how much difference, in your experience, does the headphone amp make, especially with relatively low impedance headphones?
It does a little bit, for sure. So for me, obviously, you can hear the difference between A class or A, B, and D classes. That's like immediate. But in terms of just the detail and the airiness of the sound, or the dynamic range and the transients and all these things that everybody wants to talk about a lot, they get different. And I still believe it's kind of subjective to say what is really better, because those are really nuances. And if you are enjoying exploring these nuances, then of course it makes total sense to go down this path and explore different types of preamplification and see what happens. But in terms just of usability of our product, which is designed and made for audio engineers and artists and so on, you plug them into whatever amplifier you have available, and they will deliver more than good enough sound to do your work. And that's the goal. Yeah.
So could you improve the listening experience significantly by making a pair of headphones with a matching amplifier, as, for example, Austrian Audio did with the Composer?
We probably could, and maybe we will someday. I do have it over there. It's in the dark, or a prototyping unit that's been developed about 2 years ago. But the more we learned from the final users, from the marketplace, is that the amplification for headphones is kind of a saturated market, and the added value for the final user, for our user, is very minimal. So in this regard, or as a disclaimer maybe even, we are in the pro audio industry where efficiency matters, where plug and play matters, and we don't really go into little nuances too much in terms of, or maybe the way that audiophiles would go to and discuss things. So it's just a different use case, and we try to stay this course to really truly deliver something that works in the studio, in the sessions, as a workhorse, as a tool, not so much as a something that you enjoy, obviously, but not really in this audiophiliac kind of way. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you talk like that, because most headphone manufacturers span the hi-fi market or the audiophile market, as well as the studio market and sort of the general consumer electronics market. If you look at any of the large headphone manufacturers, they'll make a range of products from a few tens of pounds or dollars right up to thousands of pounds and dollars. At the moment, you're very much targeting just the studio market. Do you plan to expand out of that, or are you going to keep that focus?
No, we are definitely going to keep that focus. It's just, it's what we do. It's also what we understand. And also, maybe as a fun fact, we truly deliver or develop our products in collaboration with our users. We have a very strong endorsement program and student program, which gives us access to hundreds of people. And basically, we learn from them in terms of how they're using these products, what are the issues that they're experiencing, what really matters. So we're kind of skipping the whole technical part in terms of, do we need it to be like 30 ohms or 50 ohms or 200 ohms? We just ignore that, which may sound funny, but we ignore that and we focus on what are they saying, how are they using it, what are the situations when our product for some reason failed, and we learn from that and then design products based on that. Then the science part, of course, is done in the lab, but we don't really have to have a discussion about it with users, because quite frankly, there's like a very little percentage of users that truly understand what a headphone is, how it's made, what all the bits and pieces that go into it. So we really try to keep it as simple as possible for the final user to understand, and also to interact with us and give us the feedback that we absolutely need to deliver the next generation of product to these users.
And given that you're working in quite a niche market, then obviously it's important to you that you have as global a reach as possible, that you are able to sell outside Europe, certainly, and presumably all over the world. It looks like that's becoming more and more difficult, thanks to certain developments in world politics. How's that all going for you?
Well, so far all good. We do still sell most of our products in Europe, as well as Japan is like a really strong market for us. And US has been growing in the last year. And funnily enough, the UK has been our primary market in the 2017, 2018, when the Brexit happened, and it's dropped to, basically off the chart, so we didn't even see it in our Excel spreadsheets anymore. But lately, in the last year, it's getting traction. Again, even though there are still import duties and all this mess being involved there. But yeah, we do sell globally. There are challenges, specifically regulatory challenges in terms of electronic wastes and stuff like that, and certification of products and so on. So there is kind of like an overhead burden, especially for a small company, because we are basically paying almost the same amounts as huge companies do. So we are in a disadvantage in that way. But at the same time, we are super lean. We can, make a move from now to 5 minutes later. So that gives us, again, the edge to produce something that's cool. And honestly, I don't think customers really care about how we deliver those products on what channels, as long as it's there, as long as it's possible to get it. The delivery should be fast. And again, the support part, I think, is extremely important. To get an answer, to get someone on the phone or reply on the email in 24 hours, maybe 2 days if it's a weekend, and get things sorted out as quickly as possible.
So I guess for a company like yours, then, there's relatively little value in having a local distributor in a territory. You're often better off selling direct and handling support yourselves.
Yeah. We did have quite a few test runs with distribution. And as it turned out, we currently only have 2 left, 2.5, which is one for the French market and the Benelux, and one for Japan. Everywhere else, we kind of terminated the agreements, and we just do direct sales.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And do you find that there are different tastes in headphones? That I know you do a lot of research among your users to find out what they like and what they don't like. Do those vary with region? Do people in Japan have different preferences from people in the US or in Europe?
Yes, they do. So what we are not researching as in general, but in terms of frequency response alone, because that's what we do. That's all we are about. As it turns out, the Japanese language has some syllables that are pronounced a little bit different than the Western languages or the Romanic languages. And they tend to need a little bit more presence in the headphones in terms of 5, 6, 7 kilohertz region. And the original design that we had, the S4X, was kind of welcomed there, but really didn't took off too much. Then we launched the S5X, which was basically a brighter headphone, and we had like a massive boost in sales, and the feedback was great. I can finally hear vocals the way I wanted it. And then funnily enough, I went to the lab and did comparison with other products that are nicely sold and even made in Japan from Sony, for example. And those headphones are kind of brittle and bright and very, direct in a way, I guess. So there is something in Japan that does demand a little bit more high-end presence in comparison to, for example, the Adriatic region. So I'm from Slovenia. Slovenia was a part of ex-Yugoslavia, so we are just an hour drive away from Venice, Italy. But if I would move my research down the Adriatic region to Bosnia and Serbia and so on, for some reason, they really love bass. It's like 3, 4, 5 dB more bass than anything else, anywhere else, which is interesting. So again, we're talking about flat frequency response in terms of scientific way, but then we have these ethnicity groups or, geo something related things that I don't really know and understand, but there are differences, and I can pick that up just by listening to customers from all over the world, and I do see patterns, and I can kind of get an idea of what the differences are between all of us. But at the end of the day, we have to deliver a product for everyone, and this is the nice thing that you've mentioned before with the Realphones and the software part and the calibration. We make them flat in terms of, scientifically flat, but you can adjust that to your taste if you really need to. If you are really used to, mixing with a lot of bass, of course, you need headphones that deliver the scientifically correct signal, but you will tend to want to have slightly more bass because you're just used to it. And at the end of the day, the most important part for us, and I believe for you, Sam, as well, is serving the community. Serving, in our case, serving our clients, in your case, serving your community with correct information so that they can make, educated decisions. I think that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if we're not helping people to make the right decisions when they spend their money, then why are we here?
Exactly.
And if you're not helping people to make the right decisions when they're mixing, why are you here?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's been absolutely fascinating. So thank you very much, Rok Gulič from OLLO Audio. You've been listening to the Sound on Sound People and Music Industry podcast with me, Sam Inglis. Thank you for listening. And be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode, where you'll find further information along with web links and details of all the other episodes. And just before you go, let me point you to the soundonsound.com/podcasts website page, where you can explore what's playing on our other channels.